The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. I'm going to talk about today a line from Zen Master Bankei. All is resolved within the unborn. And all things are resolved within the unborn. And I'm working on this. I'm not done with this. I'll probably be resolving things all my life, and after I die too. The statement, all things are resolved within the unborn, it was a fundamental part of Bankei's teaching and his practice. And it's a statement of both faith and direction. Direction for us and his own direction. It offers to us, no matter what our struggles, no matter what's going on, all things can find resolution. Forgive me. Sorry. What does it mean to resolve something? Well, the dictionary has all kinds of definitions of resolve and resolution, but I'm going to pull out the few words which I found very apropos for spiritual practice. So, if the noun resolution, it means one being firmly determined about something. And resolution also comes from the verb resolve, which is Latin, to loosen, undo, settle. Those words are very important. I'm going to come back to them. To loosen, undo, settle. Spiritually speaking, firm determination is necessary in that we must do our part of whatever it is that we are unresolved about, whatever it is that is bugging us. The act of faith necessary for facing something which can be fundamental to our very being or is just downright irritating is by its very nature quite deep, even in the simplest of situations. The determination involves sangha on our part. We have to see our own actions and be willing to take refuge and to be contrite about them. That's very important. That's a really important part of resolving something. Additionally, we must be determined not to turn the wheel of karma in the wrong direction again and to have these things going on and on. And what about the verb aspect of resolving? That loosening, the unsettling, the undoing and the settling. Well, if we sit up straight in front of the Buddhas and ancestors, for our part, whilst in faith looking up, we have to look at something, really, before we can resolve it. And this is really the hard part. We have to let go of our views, our opinions, the way of seeing things. We have to really be willing to look at things in an entirely different direction. I'd like to talk about a seemingly small incident, which I think we all experience, and and some ways to resolve it. So some of us have family members or relations, and because they're family members, we get to hear their stories over and over again. And they say these things that drive us crazy after a while. And we want to just, we get more and more annoyed at them over time. Oh, there they go again, they're talking about such and such. Don't they see that they've been talking about this for years? Don't they see that the person they're talking about has died? It's all gone. Don't they see? Don't they listen? And so, of course, we're all ready to tell them, and often do. And that doesn't work, does it? From the voice of experience. I've been in those situations numerous times, is all I can say. So how do we look with fresh eyes? How do we loosen our reactions? How do we bring this very situation into our practice? There are many important things in this seemingly small, irritating situation. The first one is, don't get irritated or don't respond from irritation. If you see yourself getting irritated, look at yourself, not what the person's saying. Can you be still and watch your own mind? Another thing to keep in mind is, why do we want this person to be different? I think this is one of the most important questions. Someone asked me that once about someone I was conflicted with. And it really brought me up, and I went, whoa, yeah, why do I want them to be different? I'm the one that's unreconciled. They're just themselves. It was very helpful. Really, it's good to ask ourselves, who is it that wants this person to be different? And who needs to be different? Who is it that needs to change? And another really important aspect, which really goes through this whole talk, is, are we willing to practice uncomplaining all acceptance? Because that is very fundamental to our finding resolution. Our willingness to just accept without complaint, and then see what opens up for us. And of course, it goes without saying that because those things above that I was talking about are very difficult, it's really helpful to take refuge. Because sometimes that's seemingly all we can do in a situation, is keep our mouth closed and ask for help. And don't open our mouths till we get the help. So that's what I've learned over the years relative to small circumstances where one is irritated or discontented with one's conditions. Over the years, I've come to recognize that there are several reasons why I suffer over and over again, and it applies to little things and big things both. Number one is, I expect things to be different than they are. And how does, they're not. They're not different. They are as they are. Two, I think I can control or change conditions or people and make things easier to live with. It makes perfect sense. It's so reasonable. But does it work? No, it never works. We cannot do that. Or if it works, that's probably really bad. And the last one is, come in. Because my mind projections seem to be habitual, I cannot understand why there is such a disconnect between my own views and someone's who has completely different views. So it's like, wait a minute, this makes perfect sense to me. and the other person is going off in a different direction. And it doesn't make any sense. And that's because I'm very familiar with my own projections, my own way of seeing it. And I'll come back to this because it really colors. It's a filter that colors all our relationships. And mine is like a blue filter. I see this over and over again. You can see from those three things why suffering and selfishness are so closely related, because there's a me, and it's the relinquishing of the me. All is resolved within the unborn. Bonnke kept telling us that, but he also kept saying that it's our self-partiality that prevents us from just living in that place with the unborn. By the way, we all know, I'm going to say it, the unborn is a phrase that comes from the Buddha. And he said, "O monks, there is an unborn, undying, uncreated. And if there were not this unborn, undying, uncreated, there would be no escape from suffering." And Bonnke just is taking that and saying, the unborn, go into the unborn, that's where everything resolves. That's how we find a difference. And so really, the practice that we do over and over again is the refraining, the watching our minds, and the taking of a deeper refuge. So that irritation we feel when someone's doing something that's irritating us, that's relatively small situation, but it applies to big situations. As we all know, there are people who hate other people because of their gender choices, because of their religious choices, because of an infinite variety of because-ofs. And those can be very difficult conditions to be living in, where one feels that one is rejected because of these situations. Additionally, people can hate us or be dissatisfied with us or be unkind to us because of our personalities. So I'm switching this. Instead of feeling victimized by the person who's irritating us, it works the other way too. We irritate people. It's real obvious. And we all know from families there are certain love-hate scenarios that, or we have difficult people we work with or we live with, and politics and what's happening in the world. Well, this is a rich situation, right? This is samsara. This is human life. And it offers us boundless opportunities for resolving within the unborn. And I want to emphasize, Bonnke said all. All is resolved. He didn't say everything but this. He said all is resolved within the unborn. And I can say from my own experience that many things get resolved within the unborn. But I am not at a place where all is resolved within the unborn. And so that is also how life is, because we have moments where we resolve something. I myself experienced the resolution of several very difficult relationships for me. And I struggled with them. I reacted to them in my life. And then through practice, I learned to refrain from reacting, clean up my own part, and see what I was doing that was causing the difficulty. It changed the way I looked at all of the relationships. So my experience is that you can resolve things sometimes by talking directly to a person if you are out of the way and being still. And you can resolve things with someone if they can't talk, and you can't. Doesn't matter. You can resolve it. sometimes people get dementia or have an illness and they cannot talk. But you can still resolve things. And sometimes you can resolve things with people who have died. Because it doesn't stop. It's always open. We are carrying the things that need resolution. And it's our own training that brings them to resolution. I have to say, sometimes I'm lived a long time. Sometimes things seem like they go on endlessly and that we never break free of them. And then all of a sudden, they're not there anymore. We've done our work, and we haven't even seen it, but it's dropped off. That happens. And sometimes it doesn't get resolved, and the karma continues. But we've done our best. We've done our part as best we could. No matter how it presents itself to us, everything is washed and resolved. And that washing is our part and the part of the unborn. And it takes as long as it takes. So it isn't ours to control or force. Now, I had an aha moment where I realized the word resolve has solve in it. And I went, oh. And then I went, oh yeah, but spiritually, it isn't about solving. It's about resolving. And the difference is great. Because when we solve something, we're in charge. We're controlling it. We're making it happen. And spiritually, this is a delusion. And it is not good to do. It's actually not helpful. There is a tendency, I think, subconsciously we may think, oh, if I could only remove this person from my life, or if I could get this situation to change, then everything would be better. And we all know after we've been at it a while that actually it doesn't get better. It just goes to a different form, a different condition, because if we haven't resolved it, it's going to show up again. That's the truth. So, if we return to our definition of resolve, it's about loosening, undoing, settling. That's resolving. It isn't about fixing. I know for myself as a mother, it was very hard at a certain point to realize it was not my job to fix what was going on with my child. It was my job to believe that she could find her own solutions. And that's not different from all the other things we want to fix. It's a futile gesture to try and fix things. And so part of training is recognizing our propensity to want to fix things and to let that go. Resolution is not about the conditions of our lives. It's about us, inside, our hearts, our Buddha nature, our coming together, our turning towards the unborn. And the loosening that we talk about is the loosening of our views, of our me, of our self-partiality. That's what needs to be loosened and undone and allowed to go. And the settling is us returning home, going to our own true hearts, our own Buddha nature, the unborn. That resolution, all is resolved within the unborn. That's what we settle into. So when we sit still in the middle of difficult situations for us, and we just watch our mind, well, that in and of itself is enormously helpful, because we can see what are the things we're grasping after or pushing away. And it's really helpful. And then we have to let it go and accept that it is uncomplaining all acceptance to the situation. And that can mean that maybe nothing's going to change, which can be very difficult. And that's why the uncomplaining all acceptance is so important, is because when we're in the heat of it, we want it to change. But it doesn't need to change. It's that loosening that we need to bring to it. And perhaps, maybe the only thing to change will be us. Which is, yes, that's good. Perhaps we all have a moment of compassion. Isn't that a lovely thought? For something that is driving us nuts, to just be still with it and then go, oh, maybe this person has never really been listened to. The very person who's driving us nuts. Really, can we listen to them? Can we hear what it is they're saying over and over and be compassionate to that? It is unresolved for them. A year ago, my ex-husband was dying. And about a few weeks before he died, I went out to a hermitage. And I actually felt the need, it came up royally in my face, to work on resentments I had from the 25 years we lived together. And it was a painful process for me initially, but after a while I could see the benefit of it. I really felt good about it. And it was really more a question of just seeing something and saying, oh yeah, and seeing my own part in it, rather than seeing myself victimized by the situation. So it's really, really helpful. And then at the end of the retreat, I not long after, I was up where my husband was dying, and I visited him. And I walked into the room, and I saw him relax deeply. He looked at me and he went, oh, thank God. I think that's what he said. Because it was obvious to him that I had let stuff go, and that he didn't need to deal with it anymore. And that was really helpful for both of us. And it also taught me that when we let go of something, it can have a profound impact on another person. What they do with it is not our problem, but what we do with it is something that's very important. It is, as Reverend Master Jiu says, nothing matters and mindfulness is all. I think that's the same statement as all is resolved within the unborn. They are both pointing to the fact that we can let go of stuff. And her saying, and mindfulness is all, for me means this is your part. You got to still pay attention. You got to do your part to keep from setting the karmic tendencies back in motion. I think resolution can occur for our nations, for world. When I was preparing this talk, I thought, wow, what would happen if in the United States we were willing to look at the fact that when this nation began, it was founded with slavery, and that we have this karmic responsibility for having been a slave-holding country. What if we talked about it? How different it would all be. How healthy it would be to start bringing it up into the open. And because a lot of the tension between black people and white people come from this unresolved and undealt with and judgment on both sides. And to begin to talk about it would open the process of perhaps resolving it. Wouldn't America be a different place if it were free from that? I mean, if it were really free, whoa, you think about it and you think, oh, resolution can be profound. certainly that's what, it didn't solve everything, but it certainly resolved a lot of the pain and trauma from in South Africa when they had the Truth and Reconciliation, and they were able to talk about, both sides, talk about the terrible things that were done in apartheid. So resolution can occur on a country level too. And what about for our world? Because we have this situation, which most of us are aware of, though some are not, but about climate change and what is this going to do? What does it mean? And again, if we approached it from the opportunity to allow things to be resolved within the unborn, wouldn't that be a different way of dealing with what's going on? It would certainly put the anxiety out and give us an opportunity to be in sympathy with each other, including those who refuse to see that things may be, that what they're doing is detrimental to the earth, to the people of the earth. You know, I mean, there's such, you think, well, this is so obvious. Why doesn't someone see that? But they don't see it. They have their own reasons. And there's nothing wrong with their reasons. That isn't how it's resolved. It's resolved by loosening and opening to each other's views and holding it from a spiritual point of view. I wrote, I want to read this, to settle into our place of meditation, to have faith and look up when the world seems about to go over the cliff, so to speak. This is a very active place of resolution. Okay? So hold that. We all can hold that when it's there for all of us. Now I'm going to change the subject, but I'm going to read a story from the Denkuroku. If you've read the Denkuroku a lot, like I have, I love the Denkuroku, you see that it actually is a series of stories of things being resolved within the unborn. So one of my favorite stories, you could do a whole Dharma talk, you could do a whole retreat on this story. But anyway, it's of Anabote teaching Kabimora. And Kabimora, his name means he who is as the bodily excrements of a monkey. That's quite a heavy name. Monkey poo, in a polite way. So, he got into spiritual powers, and he thought he was really a great being. And then he met Anabote. And so first he tried to attack Anabote spiritually. And that didn't work. Anabote just sat still and was unmovable, and there was all this dust and clouds going on, and then it was over, and there was no Kabimora around. He had to come back. So he came back, and he came back as a bug. Now that's probably how he felt. He was a bug. Felt inadequate. That's why we have spiritual powers, is because we feel inadequate. We want these things. We think we're something if we have them. But in reality, they're not. That's not the way it works. So Anabote, he was hiding under Anabote's lecture stand, and Anabote sat down and said, he's trying to steal my teaching. So he grabbed the little bug, and he gave the bug the precepts. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. That's one of my favorite parts. Here is somebody who's being deceitful and trying to steal, and you give them the precepts. I just love it. So, we're working towards resolution here, okay? So then, Kabimora just reappears as himself. And in the course of talking, Anabote says something about the ocean of Buddha nature. And Kabimora says, I know about moving oceans, but I do not know about this ocean of Buddha nature. And Anabote says, and I'm reading, quote, mountains, rivers, and the great earth all exist in accordance with it. The 3 forms of clarity and the 6 spiritual powers manifest themselves by proceeding from it. Kabimora, upon hearing this, awoke to the truth. So why I love this story for many, many reasons, but why I'm quoting it here is that it's so apropos. Here is somebody who is completely unresolved with the unborn. They meet a true teacher, and the teacher says, it's like this, right there. And in a moment, one is resolved within the unborn. It can happen that quickly because conditions ripen, because the basic delusion got shifted 180 degrees. And of course, Kabimora was a perfect example of self-partiality, because that's what when we think spiritual powers come from us, that's self-partiality. So it's just really a good example of what's going on. Now, this is where it gets a little difficult for me, but I have something that has gone on all my life that is still as yet unresolved. And it's really like there's this filter before my eyes that has not yet lifted. And I'm seeing it. I see when it shifts. And I can well, I used to say things to myself that were very derogatory, and I'd go on and on about it. And now what happens is I say one word and I start to cry. So in one sense, it's much closer to just being able to fall away. But I recognize that the resolution, I cannot make this resolution happen. I can't make myself drop this. All I can do is do my part, which is to see when it starts to arise and not go with it. And that's a really fundamental part of resolution. And then to open ourselves up. As we know, Jesus has the vow, Jiso Bodhisattva, the Bodhisattva of great vows, has the vow to stay in hell until all beings have left. And he walks in hell with the jewel. And that jewel is for us. It's for each of us. And we can ask for that jewel. And that jewel is really an aspect of that resolution within the unborn. And he's willing to walk around in there when really it's the judgments of others, the judgments of themselves that is keeping them from seeing the jewel, from opening to the jewel. And I understand that. I would like to read you something from the scripture of Avalokiteshvara to close. If, bound in chains in prison, let us just think on Kanzeon's great holy power, at once the shackles will then set us free. Now, I've wondered about that line probably for a long time. And it occurs to me recently, it just came in the course of having sanzen with someone, and I quoted that line to them. And we both realized, yes, the very thing that seems to shackle us is the very thing that sets us free. So we're thinking, oh, let's take the chains away, push this problem away, we don't want it. But it's the actual shackles that set us free. Because it's in turning towards them and accepting them that we open up to the unborn. And in that moment, when we do that, we're free.